My name is Alexis Carter, and growing up, I was always the other child. You know the one who doesn't quite fit in, the one who doesn't meet the expectations, the family black sheep. I was used to being the shadow of my perfect older sister, Sophie, the one who was always charming, always adored. Sophie, with her flawless grades, perfect skin, and ideal life. Everything she did turned to gold, and in the eyes of my parents, I was nothing but a disappointment in comparison. And it wasn't just the way they looked at me. I was the subject of gossip in family gatherings, a joke that no one ever directly acknowledged, but everyone knew. The difficult one, the awkward one, the one who couldn't even get her act together for a wedding. It was the day of Sophie's wedding, and it felt like the universe was forcing me to relive every small instance of disappointment that had built up over the years. I was there, seated in the back corner of the church, as usual, but this time I had made a promise to myself. No more. The wedding was everything they had hoped for, perfect, picturesque, the kind of event you only see in magazines. Sophie looked radiant in her custom dress, flawless as always. The entire room was filled with well-wishers, friends, and extended family, all singing her praises. I had no problem with that, honestly. She deserved the accolades. But I didn't deserve to be invisible, to be treated like an afterthought at my own sister's wedding. I could feel it, the eyes on me, the whispers. The polite glances when people realized I had somehow managed to show up. The family disgrace, that's what I was to them. It didn't help that my parents seemed to pay more attention to their friends and business partners than to the people who truly mattered. Like me, their only daughter who had never been good enough. Then came the dreaded moment. The slideshow. It was tradition at every wedding in our family. The slideshow was meant to highlight the couple's childhoods, their growth, their journey together. It was supposed to be about Sophie and her husband-to-be, Max, but the moment the projector clicked on, I knew exactly what was about to happen. As Sophie's perfect life flickered across the screen, vacation photos, prom nights, family holidays, college graduation, I was waiting for the inevitable. It always happened at family events. Sophie was the golden child, and I was just there. But what came next made my blood run cold. The screen suddenly flashed with a photo of me. I could feel the eyes shift. The awkwardness was palpable. The picture was from a high school dance, and I didn't look like the girl who was meant to be in the spotlight. I looked out of place, stiff, unsure. It was a photo that no one had ever asked to be seen, but it was there for all to judge. The words flashed underneath it. The family screw-up. A few people laughed. I could hear Sophie's giggle from across the room. Sophie, the one who was supposed to have my back. And then it happened again. The next slide appeared, and I knew what was coming. Alexis Carter, high school dropout. The words burned through me. Broke, unemployed, single, failure. It all flashed up on that screen. I could hear the whispers now. The murmurs of people who had never even spoken to me in their lives. I tried to keep my composure, to hold my ground. But it wasn't easy. Not when the one person I had loved my whole life, the one who I thought was my family, was sitting at the front table, laughing along with everyone else. That was when I snapped. I realized something in that moment. I had always played the part they wanted me to play. I had always taken the backseat, smiled through the insults, and allowed them to make me feel like a failure. But no more. I pulled out my phone. I looked at the screen. The one message I had been waiting for. It was from Marcus, the AV guy who had helped me with everything. The message was simple: do it. With a shaky hand, I hit send. My phone buzzed, and a few seconds later, the slideshow paused. I looked up at the screen, hoping the shock would be enough to get their attention. The screen turned black. I could feel the room quieting. People shifted, confused, unsure of what had happened. And then, just as the air thickened with suspense, the screen came back to life. But this time, it wasn't what they were expecting. The slides that followed were mine. Slide 1, a picture of me graduating college. The caption, graduated with honors, the only one in the family to do so. Slide 2, my architecture license framed on my wall. The caption, licensed architect, building dreams, not just a failure. Slide 3, a photo of me at work overseeing a construction project. The caption, "Not broke, not unemployed." A successful professional. I stood up from my seat, my heart racing in my chest. I didn't need to say a word. The message had already been sent. The room was filled with the gasps of people who had been witnessing the version of me that was twisted into a joke. My parents didn't know what to do. Sophie sat frozen, her smile completely gone. And my mother, who had been the one to orchestrate everything about this wedding, was suddenly silent. I didn't need to do anything else. I didn't need to scream, to fight. I just stood there, watching as the truth unfolded in front of me. The tables shifted. The air was thick with tension. My father stood up, his face flushed with anger. "What is this?" he demanded. "Turn it off." But it was too late. The damage had been done. The moment the slideshow ended, the tension in the room was palpable. No one moved for what felt like an eternity. The guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure of what to do next. They had just watched a family unravel in front of them, and they didn't know how to process it. My father's face was red with fury, his jaw clenched tight as he looked from the screen to me. "What the hell was that, Alexis?" His voice cut through the silence like a knife. His eyes burned with anger, but there was something deeper there too, something I had never seen before. Fear. He wasn't afraid of me, he was afraid of the truth I had just exposed. Sophie, too, looked almost bewildered. The bubbly, perfect version of her that I had always envied, the version of her that everyone adored, was gone. In her place stood someone fragile, desperate, and utterly caught off guard. She looked at me as if she had never seen me before. You did this." Her voice was shaking, barely audible. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I simply watched as her perfect little world started to collapse. My mother's eyes were fixed on me, wide with disbelief. Her hands trembled as she clutched her wine glass, staring at the screen as if it were a personal betrayal. She was always the one who played the role of the family matriarch, who kept the image intact, who had everything under control. But now, her composure was shattered. The pristine facade was gone, and I was finally starting to see my family for what they truly were. My father took a step toward me, his eyes wild with anger, his voice low and threatening. "Sit down, Alexis, now." I stood my ground. "No." The entire room watched us. My heart was pounding, but my hands didn't shake. This was it, the moment I had waited for my whole life. The moment when I finally stopped being invisible. "You've embarrassed the family enough," he spat, his voice laced with venom. "I don't care what you think you've proved tonight, but you've ruined everything. You've ruined Sophie's wedding." I didn't flinch. "No, Dad, you ruined me." He recoiled as if I had struck him. For the first time in my life, I saw something other than contempt in his eyes, hurt. But it wasn't the hurt of a father who cared about his daughter. It was the hurt of someone who realized he could no longer control the narrative. Sophie opened her mouth to speak, but I held up my hand, silencing her. "Don't speak to me like that again," I said. My voice was steady, unwavering. I didn't need to shout or cry. The power was finally mine. "Don't ever again tell me what my place is in this family." Sophie flinched, her tears starting to well up in her eyes, but I couldn't feel sympathy for her. Not now. Not after everything she had been complicit in. After I said my piece, I turned around and walked out of the reception hall, not looking back. I didn't need to. I had said everything I needed to say. The guests, the people who had once looked at me with pity or indifference, now whispered amongst themselves. It was as if the entire room had shifted its allegiance. The people who had been charmed by my perfect sister were now unsure of everything they thought they knew about the Linden family. I stepped outside into the cool October evening, taking a deep breath as I tried to steady myself. My mind was racing, but the adrenaline was slowly wearing off. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel like I had won, but I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, relief. For the first time, I didn't have to be their puppet anymore. For the first time, I was free. As I stood outside, processing everything that had just happened, a car pulled up beside me. I turned, not sure who it was, but then I saw her. Eleanor Whitmore, my mother's closest friend. the woman who had always been a silent observer of our family drama. She was the one who had stood by and watched my family tear me apart without ever intervening. But now, she was stepping out of the car with a purposeful stride. Her expression was calm, measured. "Alexis," she said, her voice steady, "you did the right thing tonight." I blinked in surprise. Eleanor Whitmore, the woman who had always acted like my family's biggest cheerleader. I had never expected her to say anything of the sort. "What do you mean?" I asked, still reeling from the events of the night. She stepped closer, her gaze shifting to the front of the venue. "Your parents, they're not who they appear to be." I looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" "I've seen it before, Alexis." She paused, as if weighing her next words carefully. "I know what it's like to feel invisible. I know what it's like to be controlled by the image others want you to uphold." My heart skipped a beat. Eleanor was opening up to me in a way I never imagined. She had always been the epitome of elegance and composure, someone who had never once spoken out of turn. "My own daughter, she's in the same position you were in." She took a deep breath, the weight of her words settling in. "But the difference is, I didn't have the courage you did." It took a moment for her words to sink in. Eleanor had been watching me, and perhaps she had seen something in me that I hadn't even recognized in myself. She wasn't just talking about the past. She was talking about hope. She was telling me that my choice to stand up for myself, to claim my worth, was the right one. The next few days felt like a whirlwind. The wedding had ended in chaos, but the repercussions were just beginning. My phone buzzed constantly, messages from friends and acquaintances who had been present at the wedding, trying to make sense of what had happened. But it was the messages I didn't expect that truly took me by surprise. There was one from Marcus, the AV technician. "You did it. You really did it. I'm proud of you." There was another from Eleanor offering her support. She had told me about her own family's struggles, about how her daughter had chosen to distance herself from the same family pressures I had been facing for years. She had even suggested we meet for coffee soon to discuss potential professional opportunities in architecture, a field I had been trying to break into for years. And then the unexpected text came from Sophie. "I'm sorry, Alexis. It wasn't much, but it was a start." It was the first real apology I had ever received from her. She hadn't blamed me for the chaos, hadn't deflected or minimized what I had done. She simply acknowledged it, and that meant more to me than any apology I had ever received from my parents. As I drove home from the wedding, the weight of the evening's events settled in. I wasn't sure what would come of my family, if anything at all. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of losing their love, because I realized that I had been losing myself in the process of trying to keep them happy. I was done with trying to fit into their mold. I was done pretending to be someone I wasn't for the sake of their image. I was done being the invisible one. In the days that followed, I moved forward with a new sense of purpose. I threw myself into my work, finally taking the time to focus on the things that mattered to me. And slowly, I started to rebuild myself. I didn't need my family's approval. I didn't need their love on their terms. What I needed was respect, from myself, and from the people who truly valued me for who I was, not for who they wanted me to be. And maybe, just maybe, they would come to realize that the person they had once written off as a failure was far stronger and more capable than they could ever imagine.